Interrogating Africa. Interrogating Africa. Interrogating Africa.
Interrogating Africa with Dr. Edem Adote on Radio Universe 105.7 FM every Thursday at 2 p.m.
Interrogating Africa.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to another session of Interrogating Africa. I'm your host, Dr. Edem Adote, and today we continue our series in academic resources in the Institute of African Studies. Today we're looking at the Ghana Dance Ensemble, and I have with me the acting director, Dr. Moses Nii Dortey, and a member of the ensemble, Nii Dortey. Welcome to Interrogating Africa.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Moses Nii Dortey is an ethnomusicologist and music educationist. He holds an MPhil and PhD in African Studies from the University of Ghana. His research interests are in art music of Ghana and the cultural political context of folk opera development in Ghana music and the related arts and traditional festivals as integrated performances. Among some of his recent publications are The Performing Arts and the Post-Colonial Ghanaian Experience, the Ghana National Symphony Orchestra in Perspective, published with M. A. Ahin in 2010, and in 2012 he published Historical Cultural Context of Folk Opera Development in Ghana, Sakakwe is the Lost Fisherman, in Perspective. Nii Dortey is a xylophonist with the Ghana Dance Ensemble, and he's been with the ensemble for 15 years. Am I right?
13.
13. Okay, that's a very long time to be playing xylophone. Okay. Welcome to Interrogating Africa. Listeners, you can follow the program on social media platforms. On Twitter, handle is at Interro Africa, and on Facebook, it is Interrogating Africa. Dr. Nii Dortey, how many national dance companies do we have?
I was just talking to Macklin about it, and he gave me a very interesting answer. It looks like two, one located in the National Theatre and the original located within the premises of the University of Ghana, Institute of African Studies to be specific.
Okay.
And he tells me, ordinarily they should be writing the National Theatre, one should be called National Dance Company. But they often remember to do that distinction when the two companies are together. Then in order to draw the distinction, they say that they are the National Dance Company. Otherwise, what you hear, it's almost like there are two existing national dance, Ghana Dance Ensembles.
Okay.
Yeah.
What accounts for that?
I think those who went to the theatre essentially came out of Legon. Mm-hmm. You know, in 1992, when the National Theatre was built, it became necessary to populate it with resident ensembles. Okay. And so essentially it was a section of the dancers in the university who left there. And it's almost like they carried with it all the traditions as well as the name.
Oh, okay.
So that perhaps accounts for sometimes the blurring out of the differences in terms of the name of the two companies.
But the original one is in the Institute.
Obviously. I mean, between 62 and 92, okay? So even if the years in which they were born are anything to go by, you know, between 1962, when the Ghana Dance Ensemble in the National Institute was officially born, and then 92 when the theatre was established, and you know, that's it.
Okay. Okay, so briefly tell us about the original Ghana Dance.
Okay, so let me start, and then Macklin would come in at certain points. So as I hinted earlier, in 1962, just a year earlier, the Institute of African Studies had been born, had been established with the governmental instruction from Nkrumah to research into African culture in African-specific ways, in ways in which told African stories by the Africans. And then not too long after that, Nketia, who was right in the nick of things then, discovered that we couldn't only be talking about music and the arts without a demonstration wing.
Okay.
That will give practical meaning to the things that we were talking about. And so the School of Dance and Music was established.
Okay.
It was established as a School of Dance and Music.
Okay.
It took to start with it. I think they took about 12 or so who started a certificate course, and then 2-year certificate course followed by a 3-year diploma. And when they have matured well enough and gathered a lot of repertoire, in 1967 they were properly inaugurated as the beginning, official beginning of the Ghana Dance Ensemble. So that's briefly about its beginning. Maybe Macklin can add something.
Okay, Macklin, what can you tell us?
Yeah, I think in regard to that, people were sent to the various regions cut across the country to pick an original dance performance and drummers to form the ensemble.
Okay.
And every region has a representative, and then the various dances from the region that was learned by the drummers and the dancers. So people were forced to bring some original drummers and dancers to the African studies to come and teach those who were the young ones who were to learn the traditional dances.
Okay. So how were you recruited?
I was recruited. The university has a policy where from time to time they do recruitment, and it used to be published in the newspapers and social media and what have you. So I also had the information there and I applied.
Okay.
Yes.
What is the admission process like? Do you have to perform some?
Yeah, once you applied, you'll be called to be interviewed. Yeah, the talent that you have, you exhibit it.
Okay.
And if it is up to standard, and they'll recruit you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mean in the ensemble you have people from the 10 regions of Ghana from the various regions?
Yes, we have all over the 10 regions represented.
Oh, okay. That is interesting.
Essentially, you need to revisit the context within which this was done. This was at a time, and you are a historian, so you know very well at the death when Ghana gained independence, one of the challenges it was faced with was factionalism and regionalism. And so it was part of the political objectives to unite the nation. And the arts were seen, especially by Nkrumah then, as a very important medium by which the nation could be bonded together. So it was part of the policy to deliberately not only choose artists from all the regions, but also to deliberately choose dancers, art forms that come from all over the country. And I remember it filtered, it was not limited to Ghana Dance Ensemble. Indeed, it went into literature, into theater and stuff like that. So, for example, the area that I have been interested in working in the folk art, folk theater, deliberately you have people like Sakakwe who lived those years, deliberately choosing and fusing dances from all over the country into one. And so within the same play you can hear songs, folk songs coming from the various regions, dances, instruments, the people themselves, just so that there can be this semblance of unity. And somebody came to watch your performances, you will see the nation represented in one performance. And that was the context within which this policy of deliberately choosing people from the various regions and stuff like that came about.
So as a dance ensemble, are they the same people who play the songs and dance to them, or they have different professional group that does drumming and they just do the dancing? What exactly do they do?
They are the same. So like he's telling you, he's an instrumentalist. Essentially, he plays the xylophone. And when the advert went out, he was picked, and so were dancers. And so they are professional dancers who are specialists in specific dances from their home areas, and they brought it on board. The good thing though is that when they come, they don't stick to what they came with. yeah, you find them also picking lessons from the other dancers that come from the various areas. So it's quite interesting when you see them performing, and at one point somebody is the lead instrumentalist. So if we were performing dances, for example, from the Dagara area where he comes from, you see him leading as a main xylophonist. And then suddenly we shift to Volta region, we want to hear something like Ajobo or Achiagbeko and stuff like that. And you have somebody else like Christopher taking over the master drum, you know. But when he was playing, what Christopher might be doing, for example, is to join in the supporting on some instruments.
Okay.
And that's how they pick from that. All in this whole idea of wedging up a nation through the art. You know, so that they themselves represent that kind of unity that the nation was desiring. Yeah.
Because I'm curious, those who play the drums and those who dance,
Yeah.
if they are coming from different backgrounds, how do you match the two? So I'm playing, say, one type of drum from the Volta region, but the dancers are coming from another part of the Volta region where they don't dance to that kind of song. How do you learn it?
So maybe he can start and then I'll add to.
I think when you see the drummers and dancers, some playing and others dancing, is not actually mean that those who are playing the drums cannot dance.
Okay.
Yeah. Those who are also dancing can play the drums in the way, because you have, the drum is a language.
Okay.
So when you don't know the language, it's difficult for you to react according to the instruction of the drum. As Doc was saying, it will be when in time you can see, even now the female play drums.
Okay.
You can see the dancer playing drums and the drummer dancing.
Okay.
It's a mix of everything.
Okay.
We do rehearsals every day. Those that you are not sure, as I'm telling you, I can play Toguachan, which is from the Volta region.
Okay.
You know, yes.
I wish we had some drums here.
Yeah. So sorry, your question was.
Yeah, so I was saying how you blend the two. See the drummers and the dancers, but like you explained.
Yeah.
There are times when they are the same people who are doing the dance and the drums. So wondering how you combine the two. Somebody's coming from a different ethnic group, or even from a particular region, but the part of region is coming from, they do a different dance than what do you do? How do they learn to dance those?
You should see them every morning. That's why they are so fit. It's one thing I envy seriously from them. I wish I could dance myself. You know. Frankly, you should see them in the mirror room in the morning with a mirror, the place where they call the mirror room, taking initial warm up, and then they go into the
How do they warm up?
Hey, very dangerous. You know, they do physical exercise because you have to be agile. You have to be fit. You have to be agile. You have to have a sense of timing, because for you to be your dance movement to be in sync with another, you need to have a sense of timing. Doing it just within time. What regulates your activity and the other partner with whom you are performing is basically time. Okay. And the time is being maintained by the instruments. Okay. And all of you need to understand that kind of language. So they go through an initial warm-up, and then they get into the dance hall when they do technique. And there is a teacher who does this. And as I was telling you from the beginning, it wasn't in a school. I think along the years, the school has been separated from the ensemble. But other than that, it was a school where you were even awarded a certificate, and then you did a diploma. And it's all acquiring competencies in all these cross-cultural things that finally, then you could start performing together.
That is interesting. So, having said that, what really is the main function of the Ghana Dance Ensemble in the Institute of African Studies?
So again, I hinted on that a bit earlier, that we could basically classify that into three main forms. One, education, one, performance, and then one, preservation. Okay, so preservation basically is to preempt this whole thing about social change. Whether we like or not, there are challenges of development that are likely going to threaten the very survival of some of these dance forms. And so we need to be taking action, learning them, recording them. So sometimes the recording is not just what they have done, but also going even onto the field and during traditional contexts of performances where the people are doing it. can record them. And so you go to the archive, for example. I think last week you spoke to Judith.
Yeah.
You go to archive, you have a lot of those are all going towards preserving them. Again, I guess the preserving thing has to do with there's a link directly with the performance bit. Because you see, as you perform them, national events, University of Ghana event, constantly there are graduation ceremonies and other closing ceremonies and stuff like that.
So it's the Ghana Dance Ensemble that we see on this occasion?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
Literally, I think they have a monopoly of those performances.
Sure.
They have a monopoly of those performances. That is one of the ways also for not just the performance, but also preservation through performance.
okay.
You know, you get these things ingrained in people's consciousness that constantly, even schools and private schools who want to do certain things want to see a traditional performance.
Okay.
To usher in dignitaries, to perform dances like Kete, which is a royal dance, you know, stuff like that, to welcome stuff like that. And so there is that preservation and performance bit.
Okay.
And then the third one I mentioned is education.
Okay.
Originally, it was also to train dance teachers for the schools.
Okay.
You know, that's also, so it's a kind of intertwined.
What happened to that? You said originally, doesn't mean that now they don't train dance teachers for the schools?
I think what may have happened is that I think now the Ghana Dance, the School of Dance,
School of Performing Arts.
Yeah, School of Performing Arts seem to have taken over that role, where they train. They are more. So that is a school where people enroll and they go through a dance syllabus, and then you finish and you were awarded with a certificate. That role which we saw with the ensemble from 1962 onwards seemed to have taken away, and that's why I say that originally. Yeah. So now they seem to be focusing more on the performance bit, rather than on the education side. I don't know whether you have anything to.
Yeah, I think that's right. We are basically on the talent. It's basically on talent. We are not looking at the paper side. So we are looking at what your talent is.
So, if we're talking about talent, if I have somebody from my village who I think is very talented in playing any of the drums, can I just drop his video at your school and see what happens?
If we are in need of such specialists, a couple of times we have had some of our members getting poached. Whether poached is the right word, but occasionally they themselves, I mean, you want to improve upon your own business. So a couple of, as I speak to one of the old guys, Bernard Warmer, is in town, and he decided that he wanted to visit the alma mater. So he called us. He's there with his visitors, and they are with the rest of the ensemble members in the dance hall right now, taking a few lessons and strategy. So a couple of times we have had a couple of our people like that leaving the shores of the country, and then there have been the need to replace such personnel. Then it is advertised, and then when you drop your picture, otherwise if we don't quite, because it takes time also to build expertise in this thing. And as you can see, when they come into the formal institution as this, a couple of things change. A couple of things. For example, let me give you this little example. If you went into the traditional setup and there is a performance, the normal thing you would see is that the drummers and the percussionists are seated like this, and the drummers face them. Is that right?
Yeah.
Occasionally they might turn their backs to them and stuff like that. But essentially you relate to them, you dance to them. One of the first things that's changed when you come into a formal system where you are repackaging this thing for a different audience in the theater, a clear case where there is a separation between the stage and then the audience. You have the drummer sitting behind, and now the target is with the audience. They dance to them. So a couple of the traditions change, and so even the master drummers and the master practitioners you talk about, even they, when they come, there are a few things that must change in their own orientations in order to adjust this and fit it into the new paradigm. You are a master xylophonist. You should be able to tell me what things changed.
Surely, because of the environment, and when you look at back at the villages, what we play anything. It is not format. It's not structured. Like if sometimes when you play something finished and they ask you to teach, it becomes a problem. But here's the case: it is structured. That what you do, you can continue to do the same. So the generations continue. Yeah.
But then when you pick these dancers from their cultural settings and you transpose them here, do you change anything besides the sitting arrangement? Do you change the way the dance is performed, the way the drums are played? Does anything change?
Yes. It has to change because of choreograph style way of doing things.
Okay.
Yeah, there are sometimes the dancers, you have to design it in a way, looking at the stage, it wouldn't be like the home that is just opened a vast place for us to perform, jump everywhere up and down. Here it is a little bit choreographed.
Okay.
We consider the height, the size of the person, and we choreograph in that way.
Okay.
By all means, something has to be changed. If you are brought from Panyakun, if you come to Legon, there must be change.
Yeah.
Though maybe the traditional drumming may not change. It may be modernized. We have to modernize it in a way to suit to the choreograph we have here, but it not basically change.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then if one then will wonder how authentic the performances will be if they are supposed to be serving as teaching units of the institute.
Authentic. You're raising issues with authenticity with regards to what the dancers.
The performance, the drumming and the performance.
Yeah, a couple of times these questions have been raised. That imagine our forefathers who created the dancers were alive, would they be doing the same thing?
No.
Would they be doing the same thing?
It wouldn't be.
Yeah, it might well be that what we see as the tradition might well be an experimentation by them. And then we came to meet it at that point. And so adding to them is actually the way to go. So there are professionals who would, for example, deconstruct the dance completely, break them down, look at them, in other words, look at the little bits of the dance motifs, of the movement, hand, leg, body, and what is it out of it that they like. They could take just those little movements and choreograph them into something extraordinarily new that if you see and they tell you that the basic movement, dance units were taken from this traditional dance, you might not even recognize them. And like he added earlier, by the time they consider other aesthetic factors, like how do I so select the performance so that perhaps the height of the performers themselves give a certain picture. So either from very tall to the short and then rising again to this thing, to the very tallest, which colors of their costumes, which if you go into the traditional context of performance, you must never find that that coloring, and also arrange the colors and the uniforms and the way they sew the, and the other dance forms and movements are even exaggerated a bit. Remember that the focus is, this is a new audience. Why should somebody leave the house and come to pay, and come to sit down for 1.5 hours, 2 hours watching me? Why? If you could see exactly the same thing within the traditional domain, why? Okay.
So Doc, then are you saying that now the focus is more on entertainment than reproducing what pertains in the traditional setting? Packaging it for a new audience, or they are trying to, reproduce what it's in the local setting that they claim to perform it?
I prefer to call it creative modifications. Okay? It's happening in all the arts. So you go into theater, if one Sutherland picks Anansi stories, the way it is told in the village, and is repackaged it for National Theatre, they call it Anansi Bro at the National Theatre. Okay? It's happening in the music where people pick folk tunes and pick just rhythmic and melodic motifs out of the music and repackage it, and the next thing they are singing it in soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. If you go into the original traditional, you will hear it in 4 parts. The same thing is happening in dance, where with this whole conception, where our forefathers who created these dances, were they to be alive and performing this, would they just keep to this? Okay? And can we envisage where the world is going? And so repackage this without losing the authenticity, but also taking into account where the world is going and our new audience.
I think the concern some people have raised is this. This is supposed to be a demonstration section of the institute where those who are probably taking courses in dance and drumming or whatever it is, see performances of these things that they've learned in the books. Now, if these people are out there performing something that is totally different from what people are reading, then where lies the demonstration bit of what the ensemble is supposed to do?
I must confess, first of all, it is not totally different.
Okay.
and
that is very refreshing.
and the preservation bit is still there.
Okay.
But I think they draw, Macklin, you can speak to this, they draw a clear distinction between performing the folk dances or traditional dances, and at the same time there is the choreography bit. So they have what they call contemporary dance forms. You see, so they have that one, because that also shows that you are up and doing. You are recreating new things. You are not just living on what has been done 100 years ago, 150 years ago, but you yourself, you are creative imagination, seeing dance movements and doing new things. So they have that is what they call the contemporary. Frankly, what they are doing there now, as I speak at the dance hall, is doing the contemporary.
Okay.
And then you have context within which people demand the traditional forms too. And that's one too, they do them. So they perform kete. They perform bamaya. They perform all the achiabeko with all the pomp and pageantry. Of course, they could be slightly exaggerated, as I'm saying. But essentially, it represents them.
So, talking about contemporary dancers, do you do azonto moves and all that? Luckily, do you do that?
Yeah, we do a lot. Or myself.
No, I mean the ensemble.
We do contemporary dances a lot. That's what he just said. If you go there currently, we are doing a contemporary dance, and we have an incoming contemporary dance that we call the map. That we usually do.
Which one? Map of Africa?
Map of Ghana. The map of Ghana. And then, I don't know the date very well, but we will be performing it
somewhere around 17th of June.
17th of June, where?
At the National Theatre.
So, wow. We would love to be there to see.
I mean, being promoted by one Doris Kuono.
Okay.
I'm told they did it in the past, and she's seeking to reproduce it. So, she decided to re-engage the ensemble.
Listeners, the program is still integrating Africa, and with Dr. Nii Dortey, who is the acting director of the Ghana Dance Ensemble, and Macklin, who is the alumnus with the ensemble. And we're looking at one of the academic resource units of the Institute of African Studies. What repertoire do you have, the ensemble?
Yeah, so we almost alluded to the repertoire. We could divide them into two main forms, contemporary and traditional.
How representative of the various ethnic groups is it?
To a very large extent, very representative.
Okay.
Of course, what you might not see on the face of it or at an event is that often he who pays the piper causes the tune. So whoever invites us might have specific choices of dances that they want. And so if perhaps you were following the context of performances where GD gets engaged, you might think that you kept seeing the same, but it is because those who invite you say that, can you come and perform for example, Kete to usher in our dignitaries? Can you do Phantom for us? Can you then do a bit of entertainment? Maybe it might give you a leeway so you could choose Ibamaya or stuff like that. But essentially they do. So you get, but otherwise, there are dances all over the country. The North is well represented. The Volta, Western region,
Ashanti regions.
They are very well represented.
And if, let me add to that, if you watch GTV at the Aglo Women Ministry at the Independence Square, we always represent them. They call us for the 10 regions dances representing all the other regions. You know, people come from all the regions to meet yes, to do the prayers and those things. So when they invite us, sometimes they ask for the 10 regions, and we have to represent.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have all the dances, traditional, that we perform for them. They say this dance is from here, we perform this one from here, all the 10 regions.
Yeah. We are the first group to acknowledge that, hey, there are countless number of traditional dances that are yet to be unearthed. Today we have just spoken about it. There are, and that's one of our works. To find money, step into the traditional context of performances, learn them directly as they used to be, and then come to see what we can do with them. So there are still ongoing attempts at recording and unearthing more of some traditional forms.
Listeners, the program is still Interrogating Africa. You can follow us on our social media platforms. On Twitter is at Interro Africa, and on Facebook it is Interrogating Africa. We'll go for a short musical break, and when we come back, we'll be looking at their teaching functions in the Institute of African Studies. Listeners, welcome back. The program is still Interrogating Africa. And you can follow us on our social media platforms. On Facebook, it's Interrogating Africa, and on Twitter, the handle is @Inter Africa. I'm with Dr. Nii Dortey, the acting director of the Ghana Dance Ensemble, and Macklin Derry, a performer with the ensemble. The song you just listened to is coming from the GH Kwadanketia archives. And the professionals were telling that it's one of the contemporary works of our traditional songs. So those of you interested in music, you can go to the archives, and the posts are also there to educate you on what these works are all about.
Then we could credit Hiwale, led by the laboratory and his people for,
okay. So, Doc, now to the functions of the GDE in African Studies. Does research, teaching, and experimental performances continue to underline their work in the institute?
That's a curious one, Yes, originally that is what, and as I laid out the history, the historical context within which it was born. These were very much, it seemed it were a lot more obvious in time past.
Okay.
It's not too obvious nowadays. Supposed to serve as a demonstration wing. Well, thankfully, one of the required courses the institute mounts on behalf of the university is also in dance. So there's a dance component, and I think they come in directly. They help in the practical. Okay. So when the students have done the first 6 weeks and written their IA, those who did opt for dance, for example, you have the ensemble helping their tutors to teach the students those practical things often in the evenings. Yeah. And then at the end of the semester, they take a bit of a practical exam and get marks for it. So that is a more direct way of doing that. The second thing is that a couple of their performances are also recorded, and so they are in the archive. Okay. And if anybody wants,
we're talking about the
GH Kwadanketia archive. Okay. And so if anybody wanted a specific performance to illustrate anything that they are teaching, they could always go for them. I remember that those of us in our courses, traditional African music and contemporary, often we take the students to the Nketia archive and to take them through not just traditional dance forms that have been recorded and which are kept there, but also sometimes to look at what the Ghana Dance Ensemble has done in the past to emphasize the newer context of the performances of some of our traditional music. So that is only as far as it goes. Other than that, what it has essentially become is getting invited to formal programs. So recently there was a presentation on copyright at the Institute of African Studies, and then they will perform to usher in the dignitaries, and then perform for them before perhaps the main speaker speaks. Then when they finish, play for them to also walk away at all the university's program, and then even the national one. So most of the works of parliament, or the president's main addresses, and all of that. As we speak, we just received an invitation from the state protocol for similar things. I think that is basically, this has become basically the bulk, takes bulk of their time. And the demonstration and direct involvement in teaching is now sort of limited to what they do with their undergraduate level 200s.
Yes, because there's been this concern that it looks like they're more interested in those public I don't know if it's commercial performances rather than assisting with real teaching on the university campus.
If anything, I think we are not engaging them.
That's true.
We are not engaging them. So,
and Macklin, I think you really enjoy the traveling and all that and teaching the students.
Oh, we enjoy it all.
We don't engage them, and I think it's also because many people do not know. Over the years, time seems to have erased this kind of usefulness, this kind of resource, using them as a direct resource, telling them in advance, we want the students to watch this performance, in its rightful context, give them sufficient time, they will prepare, take the students, they will watch them do the demonstration. They can interact with them directly because they are masters of what they do. You know, and all over. I think over the time this one seems to have, then we can always go back and revamp.
Okay. I think like we pointed out, the essence of this program is to bring to the fore some of these resources that are available that people, like you said, are not aware of, and how we can make better use of some of these resources.
Fantastic.
And you also said that they have some recordings in the GHMPT archive.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
They do.
Which dances do they have there?
Frankly, all the dances that they have ever staged, there possibly should be recordings over there.
Okay.
What we are currently doing, though, is to acknowledge that it's one thing doing an amateurish recording, you know, and putting them in, and then it's quite another thing, spending a little bit more money, having professionals do a proper recording. So what we are doing is to re-record them professionally. In other words, you have about 5-6 cameras mounted, some overhead and stuff like that. But what those so-called professional recordings also do is that they take the performance out of the rightful context.
Oh, okay.
Then the people are aware that there are cameras on them and their face and movements and all stuff. So there is a pros and cons for all. And as much as possible, if you want any, all you need to do is to place a request at the archive.
Okay.
And you might.
Okay. Do you have any of these recordings on the market? Does anybody?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
Unfortunately, no. Almost for next year, I think GDA would be 50 years.
50 years, yeah.
Since it was officially inaugurated in 1967.
Okay. What are the program
And
activities lined up?
I think we should begin to think about, you know, and unfortunately we haven't quite gone on the commercial side.
Okay.
I think, you know, there is a way in which if you are within a formal institution, and your salaries seem to be small, is guaranteed already. Sometimes some of these commercial, the advantages that you could get lost on you.
Yeah.
But I think it's something we should be thinking about strongly after 50 years.
Yes. Listeners, sadly we've come to the end of this program. And Maclean, what is the next performance of the ensemble so we can invite listeners to come and watch?
The next performance is on the 1st July. 1st July at the State Protocol.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But even before then, on the 7th, we announced the 17th June.
Yeah.
And I bet you in between, sometimes within a day or two, you have invitations to perform just like that. Less than 24 hours, you have to quickly get. So there might be so many.
Right.
Yeah.
Literally every 2 or 3 days, we have a performance.
So listeners, as and when we get any performance that is the performance that is near your neighborhood, you can just pass by and see exactly what these professionals are doing with our dancers. The program has been Integrating Africa. I've been with Dr. Nii Dortey, who is the Acting Director of the Ghana Dance Ensemble, and Nii Dortey, a xylophonist with the Ghana Dance Ensemble. I've been your host, Dr. Ghana, and my assistant has been Peter. Until next week, you can follow the discussion on our social media platforms. On Facebook, it's Integrating Africa, and on Twitter, it is @InteroAfrica. See you next week. Bye.
Holy Ghost. Now check it out. True Dream Music Production present Pastor